comes courtesy of our friends over at The View. When I say our friends over at The View, I mean the low IQ idiots who are on panel at The View. And yes, you are a complete stupid idiot. My God, she is so stupid. This is the same lady who thinks everything is racist. Everything and everyone is racist, except Hitler and the Holocaust. Genius.
Ben Shapiro has made a name for himself by relentlessly calling out what he sees as the flaws in The View. With his sharp commentary and direct approach, he often critiques the show for promoting opinions he believes are poorly researched and heavily biased. He argues that the hosts frequently share inaccurate takes on current events, presenting a one-sided, liberal perspective. Shapiro has never hidden his disapproval of The View, but let's break down exactly why he finds it both frustrating and, at times, downright ridiculous.
Lifelong ambition to actually be a guest on The View. They'll never have me on, of course, because it would go horribly.
Ben was stunned when Whoopi Goldberg argued that the Holocaust wasn't actually about race, despite it being one of the most racially driven genocides in modern history.
Isn't about race. No. It's not about race. No, it's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
For Ben, who is Jewish, this wasn't just offensive, it was a complete distortion of history. To him, Whoopi's statement wasn't just misinformed, it was utterly absurd.
It's not about
race.
But these are two white groups of people.
Not only is that the worst clip in the history of The View, that is the worst clip in the history of television. Like, all of television history.
Ben's reaction was both sharp and amusing. He was baffled that someone who brings race into nearly every discussion could overlook the blatant racial motivations behind the Holocaust. To him, this wasn't just a careless mistake. It was a denial of well-documented history. The murder of over 6 million Jews wasn't just a vague example of human cruelty. As Whoopi suggested, it was a deliberate, racially driven genocide that left an undeniable mark on world history.
Goldberg is obnoxious and stupid beyond all measure. The Holocaust was not about race. Ask the Nazis. The entire Holocaust was about race. All of it. Which is why they didn't just pick on Jews who observed Judaism. They picked on anyone who had quote-unquote Jewish blood. The entire thing was about...
Ben's frustration wasn't just personal, though his Jewish background certainly made it hit harder. What truly shocked him was that someone with Whoopi's platform could downplay such a significant historical event without serious pushback. To him, reducing the Holocaust to just another example of human cruelty wasn't just misguided, it was outright offensive.
Humanity to man. Nope! It is about a genocidal attempt to exterminate the Jews, which has a thousands-of-year-old history. And yes, it was rooted in...
It doesn't end there. Whoopi's controversial remarks on The View go beyond her comments on the Holocaust. She's also made outrageous comparisons between the U.S. and Israel to terrorist organizations like Hamas and the Taliban.
A complete stupid idiot. My God, she is so stupid. This is the same lady who thinks everything is racist. Everything and everyone is racist, except Hitler and the Holocaust. Genius.
Ben was visibly stunned when he heard her make such a comparison. But unsurprisingly, Whoopi didn't back down from her bold and inflammatory remark.
During the U.S., Israel, Hamas, and the Taliban as all terrorist organizations. And she has maybe way more knowledge and experience in the very complicated Middle Eastern relations. But I did find that being on a foreign committee and comparing the country to a known terror, those are organized terrorist communities, that, not Israel, but Hamas and...
Ben was baffled by the sheer absurdity of Whoopi's comparison. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone with such a massive platform could be so blatantly wrong about something so fundamental. Comparing democratic nations like the U.S. and Israel, both governed by the rule of law, to terrorist organizations isn't just ridiculous, it's borderline reckless. But even Ben has to admit, the spectacle is entertaining. Whoopi's audacity is almost unreal, and he never misses an opportunity to call her out. There are plenty of moments when even her co-hosts seem stunned by what she says, but they usually keep quiet, probably to avoid the inevitable backlash from their fellow panelists.
That depends on who you talk to.
Right. Well, I mean, that's how they're recognized as terrorist organizations.
But it does depend on who you talk to.
Well, they're recognized in this country.
Depends on who you talk to. Whoopi, always available to sign in to both compare Israel and the United States to terrorist organizations and also compare terrorist organizations to apparently not terrorist organizations. Like, Hamas is not a terrorist organization?
Let's see what Ben has to say on this.
Oh, man. It is amazing because Whoopi is sort of seen on this show as sort of the wise old sage. And I have to say, you need better sage.
Ben finds it downright hilarious how often Whoopi makes wildly misinformed statements, and even funnier that no one ever seems to challenge her. It's as if the View operates under an unspoken rule. No matter how outlandish her opinions are, they must be treated as valid. And if anyone dares to push back, they risk being the lone voice of reason in a room full of willful ignorance.
Saying that a lot of the English language has to be rethought. Blackmailing is negative, black sheep, negative. I can think of a few others if I had the time, but those words are kind of like embedded in our psyches and maybe need to be changed. Why is a black sheep a bad thing and a white sheep is a good thing? Why? They're just sheep.
Well, it's not the words. It's not the words, it's the way we think of.
This pattern of behavior isn't limited to Whoopi. Another frequent target of Ben's criticism is Joy Behar. Like Whoopi, Joy has a talent for making wildly inaccurate and poorly thought-out statements that often spark outrage.
Joy. Probably they started saying black sheep versus white sheep, not because of the commonality of the sheep, but because of black people in, like, rural Europe. Nailed it. Yeah, it's about what? African-American sheep. This is so stupid. It's about black male, like black people male in the.
For Ben, Joy's well-meaning attempts to defend marginalized groups often backfire, leading her to make statements that are ironically more racist than what she's trying to condemn. He's pointed out many times how her efforts to appear woke end up doing more harm than good, because in her rush to show support for racial minorities, she often makes broad generalizations that weaken the very causes she claims to champion.
That kids in this country are learning our history. They're not learning about slavery. They're not learning about Jim Crow. They don't understand the history of black Americans in this country. If they did, they would then understand white privilege better. So my suggestion is start teaching this stuff. It's deplorable, again, that word, that they do not learn history, period. I mean, people who are young, under 50, don't know who FDR is.
It's no surprise that Joy gets called out online for her lack of self-awareness. Ben believes if she keeps this up, she might even surpass Whoopi as the most out-of-touch voice on The View. But the absurdity doesn't stop with race and politics. Ben also takes issue with Whoopi's remarks on topics like abortion. One particularly memorable moment saw Whoopi chastising men for daring to have an opinion on the fate of fetuses.
She said, I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me with my kind of skin and my kind of hair was never considered beautiful. So, do her words resonate with you at all?
Because you're a black person? That's that.
Ben's reaction was as always spoken. He pointed out the glaring hypocrisy of her stance, particularly in light of the fact that liberal ideologies often promote inclusivity and fairness, yet here she was dismissing the voices of men people who has been humorously pointed out were once as fetuses themselves.
Any of you men have any eggs or the possibility of carrying a fetus? How dare you talk about what a fetus wants? You have no idea. I'm fine if you disagree with abortion. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, you do.
My problem comes when you tell me what I need to do with my doctor and my family. How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
It's no surprise that Joy gets called out online for her lack of self-awareness. Ben believes if she keeps this up, she might even surpass Whoopi as the most out-of-touch voice on The View. But the absurdity doesn't stop with race and politics. Ben also takes issue with Whoopi's remarks on topics like abortion. One particularly memorable moment saw Whoopi chastising men for daring to have an opinion on the fate of fetuses.
A few questions many questions on this, as it turns out. First,
transphobia.
Massive transphobia. If you don't have eggs, you can't. Are you saying that some women can't be men and some men can't be women? Are you saying that unless you have eggs, you're not a woman? Is that what you're saying, Whoopi Goldberg? Also, if that is the new standard, how about women who are postmenopausal? Whoopi Goldberg? Can they have opinions on? I mean, you can't have a baby right now, I assume. How old is Whoopi Goldberg? She's in her.
For Ben, Joy's well-meaning attempts to defend marginalized groups often backfire, leading her to make statements that are ironically more racist than what she's trying to condemn. He's pointed out many times how her efforts to appear woke end up doing more harm than good, because in her rush to show support for racial minorities, she often makes broad generalizations that weaken the very causes she claims to champion.
Another thing, I can have an opinion on what a fetus would think, because I was once a fetus. In fact, spoiler alert, all of us were once fetus. Every single one of us. I know, this is crazy. And you know what I can pretty well guarantee? Fetuses don't like being stabbed in the face and sucked into a sink.
Ben Shapiro knows all.
It doesn't end there. Whoopi's controversial remarks on The View go beyond her comments on the Holocaust. She's also made outrageous comparisons between the U.S. and Israel to terrorist organizations like Hamas and the